It had been a week since the fight with Zabuza, and Tazuna had done excellent work on the bridge. Within the next few days it would be finished. Naruto, feeling bored, decided to help the bridge builder by using his shadow clones, which doubled the work speed. During the last week, Kakashi had begun to instruct his students more seriously. Sakura and Kiba were the most enthusiastic of the three, since they had realized that Squad 8 were leagues above them. Naruto began to help Kiba with taijutsu, whilst Hinata helped Sakura with her already impressive chakra control. Sasuke was too arrogant to see Naruto's strength, so he spent most of his training time alone. During this time, Kakashi also sent his summoning dogs to find Gato's base, so he could be found and stripped of the goods he stole from the villagers. They had yet to locate his base. Tazuna's house. Everyone sat around a table eating dinner prepared by Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter. Their dinner was interrupted by Inari, Tsunami's son, who began calling them fools and saying that they stood no chance against Gato. Well, what would you rather do? Live in fear for the rest of your life, or fight back and retake what's yours? Naruto asked with a glare. Easy for you to say. You ninja get to live a good life in your villages. You don't know what we have had to go through. Inari spat back at the blonde. Naruto clenched his fist, releasing the slightest amount of ki that made Inari freeze. My parents were killed on the day I was born. Hinata's family kicked her out because she was considered too weak. Sasuke's entire clan was killed by his own brother. Naruto's gaze turned to ice. We are shinobi. Our job is to gather information, perform the jobs that others will not, and kill if necessary. We may have been chosen to get into this job, but that does not mean it is easy. Your village may not be controlled by a terrible man, but you still have a family who loves you. Now, tell me you have it worse than the rest of us. Naruto stood and excused himself before exiting the house and heading to the nearby woods. Hinata followed him, swiftly letting out an apology before running off. I knew Naruto was an orphan, but I didn't know that they died giving birth to him, Sakura said, making Kakashi stare at her. They died defending the village from the Nine Tails. Do you know who his parents are? Kiba asked. I do, but he asked me to keep it a secret until he wants to reveal his heritage. Everyone nodded. They turned back to Inari, who had tears welling up in his eyes. He ran off to his room, cursing himself for acting so uncaring to someone who had it far worse than him. Forest, next day. Naruto and Hinata woke up lying on the grass surrounded by trees and flowers. After leaving the house, Naruto remained overnight to vent out his anger and boredom, so Hinata stayed and comforted him. The two enjoyed a pleasant sleep in the wilderness. They awoke to see a figure standing beside one of the trees. Naruto smiled. So, you're Zabuza's partner. Pleased to meet you. The figure stepped into the light. He had a feminine build which was covered by cyan blue robes. In his hand he held his hunter mask. He had long dark hair and brown eyes. He gave a slight bow to the two. My name is Haku Yuki. I am Zabuza's student. Naruto nodded. He turned to Hinata to see the Byakugan active. Hinata was looking at Haku's chakra and gasped. You have a Kekkei Genkai. I can see it in your chakra. Haku nodded. My mother was a member of the Yuki clan. Zabuza found me and took me in. This was the first time they had met someone with a Kekkei Genkai outside of the Byakugan and Sharingan. Haku handed them a scroll. This contains a map of Gato's hideout. Zabuza and I have been ordered to attack the bridge builder on the day of the bridge's completion. That is when you should attack Gato in his hideout. He will have his men watching us, so we will have to fight your comrades or else he will come to the bridge in person. Naruto looked through the scroll, nodded, and placed it in his pouch. I assume that you and Zabuza have agreed to join the Leaf once Gato is out of the picture. Haku nodded slowly and placed his mask over his face. I'll make sure to give him your regards, he said, giving another slight bow before vanishing in a cloud of frost. Gato's hideout, 2 days later. There are 20 guards in total surrounding Gato's room, Hinata reported, deactivating her Byakugan. Kurenai nodded. Understood. Hinata, you are with me. We will take the back. Naruto and Shino will take the front. We'll meet in front of Gato's chamber. Squad 8 nodded before separating. Shino and Naruto snuck up on the guards guarding the entrance. They quickly killed them with a cut to the throat. They then transformed themselves into the guards and made their way inside. They silently dispatched all enemies they encountered, then burned them with Naruto's fireball jutsu. They turned the corner to see Kurenai and Hinata slit the last guard's throats. Squad 8 charged into Gato's chamber, making the plump man shriek in fright. He stumbled over to the table and grabbed a knife, which was quickly knocked away by Naruto's sword. Naruto held the sword to Gato's neck, and turned to Shino, who was opening the large safe on the opposite side of the room. The giant metal door swung open to reveal stacks of gold and other currency. Hinata took out some scrolls and began sealing the money inside, much to the dismay of Gato. Most of this money belongs to the Land of Waves. The rest goes to other small villages, reported Kurenai as she skimmed through a stack of paper. We'll have it returned after the mission. What shall we do with him? Shino asked, motioning to Gato. He has a bounty on his head. We could turn him in, Hinata said, picking up the scrolls. Kurenai nodded. Gato was a wanted man, but did not know how Hinata knew about it. Before she could ask, the Hyuga responded, I read a lot. Hinata placed a stasis scroll on the ground and placed the man inside, much to the surprise of her sensei and Shino. It's easier this way, she replied, turning to leave. The two looked over to Naruto, who glanced at them and back to his girlfriend, and shrugged in acceptance. Tazuna's bridge. How? How do I beat someone who's so strong? Sasuke asked himself as he stood bleeding in the center of Haku's ice mirrors. So far, his fire jutsus had done nothing to the ice, and he was beginning to run out of chakra. In the midst of the battle, his Sharingan had awakened with one Tomo in each eye. Normally, he would be excited, but the position he was in did not allow it. He looked down to see Kiba on one knee panting. Akamaru stood in front of his companion, snarling. Sasuke, I want to try something. Back away, Kiba said, making the Uchiha glare at him. Reluctantly, he stepped back, giving the Inuzuka room. Inuzuka style, man-beast clone, Kiba called out, transforming Akamaru into a copy of himself. The two both had long, sharp nails and fangs. Fang over fang, Kiba growled before they began to spin at high speed, becoming a pair of drills that slammed into the ice mirrors repeatedly. Haku noticed the boy's speed and decided to jump out of the mirrors. A few seconds passed and Haku was beginning to see hairline cracks in the ice. His eyes widened. No one had ever been able to damage his ice mirrors before. He was about to begin attacking when he heard Zabuza call out in his fight with Kakashi. Enough! The blonde and his friends are back, and I can sense Gato with them. Haku's eyes widened. He was about to release his jutsu when it was enveloped by a monstrous flame. Fire style, fire dragon jutsu, wind style, great breakthrough, called out two Naruto simultaneously. The two techniques combined into the flames that melted Haku's ice. It took several moments before it was nothing but a fragile sheet of thin ice. Haku continued to stare at Naruto behind his mask. Naruto gave him a smirk before turning to Kakashi, who still had his kunai brandished and aimed at Zabuza. The blonde motioned to Hinata, who threw the scroll holding Gato on the ground. Gato was released from the scroll, only to be unconscious. Seeing the body, Kakashi put away his kunai, and Zabuza placed his giant blade on his back. So, does this mean we are not enemies? Asked Zabuza. Kakashi and Kurenai nodded. I guess we better start getting used to calling you comrades, then, Zabuza said, earning an eye smile from Kakashi. Haku stood beside his master and watched as Kiba and Sasuke came struggling back towards their sensei. Haku stopped in front of Kiba and gave a slight bow. Damaged my ice mirrors. It's an impressive feat. In a few years, that jutsu you used could break them easily, I would think. Kiba gave a weak smile to the ice user before collapsing. Hinata rushed over to him and began to channel green chakra to her hands. Mystical palm technique. Slowly, Kiba's less serious injuries began to heal. Once she was finished, he was able to stand with support from Shino. She motioned for Sasuke to lay down so he could heal him as well. Sasuke huffed and looked away, only to get a glare from Kakashi. Reluctantly, he let Hinata heal him. Everyone turned to the sound of Sakura's scream. She was defending herself and Tazuna from a large thug holding a katana with only a kunai. Naruto jumped forward, landing a kick to the man's head, making him fall over. Sakura hesitated, but she summoned up the courage to drive the kunai she held into the man's chest, killing him. She pulled back and ran over to the edge of the bridge and threw up. She and the others turned to see a horde of thugs hired by Gato, all holding weapons. They probably want to get Gato back so he will pay them, Kurenai said, reaching for a shuriken. Naruto put a hand in front of her. Let me handle this. This will be the perfect time to use the new jutsu I've been working on. Kurenai nodded, but prepared herself to jump in case Naruto needed help. Naruto stepped forward and started channeling fire chakra through his body. His limbs and torso ignited with orange fire. Only his head was not affected. This is a technique I use in combination with my blazing fist style. It's like the Raikage's signature lightning cloak. Naruto formed his hands into fists. Fire style. Hell's fire dash. Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed. He appeared in the center of the horde, and the ones directly around him burst into flames. He began to strike at his opponents. Each time he struck, the flames leaped over to the enemy, burning them. The bridge was filled with the screams of burning thugs. Less than 2 minutes later, all the thugs had either ran off or were burnt to ashes. Naruto deactivated his fire cloak and looked over the battlefield, impressed with his handiwork. Such power, said Kakashi as he watched with his Sharingan. He had been able to copy the technique with his Sharingan, but it would be hard for him to perform the jutsu without training. He looked over to Sasuke, who was staring wide-eyed with his one-tomoed Sharingan. At the level he is at, his eyes would not be able to copy that. He's gonna get angry. That technique could be considered an S-rank technique on its own without the taijutsu style added on. On command, Sasuke walked angrily toward Naruto. He stopped in front of him, glaring daggers. Teach me that jutsu, dope. Now! Naruto rolled his eyes. It took me half a year to create Hell's Fire Dash, and I still know ways to make it stronger. Perhaps when your eyes are stronger. Sasuke seethed his teeth and would have attacked if Kakashi had not stopped him. Naruto turned to Tazuna, who was still shaking with fear. The bridge? The blonde said. Tazuna cleared his head and nodded and got back to work. The next day, Squad 7 and 8 were leaving the Land of Waves. Tazuna decided to name the newly constructed bridge the Great Naruto Bridge, for the help in building and protecting it, for getting rid of Gato, and for helping Inari learn to fight back. Zabuza and Haku were a little nervous that the Hokage would deny them village membership, but Kakashi encouraged them, saying that he had received a letter from Hiruzen saying that they would receive a short probation before becoming a Chunin and a Jonin respectively. How about that for our first mission? Kurenai asked with the getting. Kiba and Sakura, who still had minor wounds, smiled. Sasuke huffed. Shino remained stoic. 8 streets chasing cats and picking weeds, said Hinata with a smile. Good exercise, Naruto replied, making everyone's sweat drop. Naruto had barely broke a sweat the entire mission. Kurenai sighed. Naruto was too full of stamina to be considered human. Kurama chuckled from inside his Jinchuriki. Naruto looked up at him from inside his mind. What's so funny, he asked. Kurama grinned. Just the fact that your human friends have seen but a fraction of your power. Not to mention they still haven't seen mine either. Naruto smirked. In due time, Kurama. In due time.